Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Matt Olsen. I'm the Assistant Attorney General for National Security at the Department of Justice. I'm joined today by my colleagues in the Justice Department, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Matthew Graves, as well as FBI Assistant Director for the Counterintelligence Division, Suzanne Turner. We're also joined today by Undersecretary of Treasury for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence, Brian Nelson, as well as Deputy U.S. Special Representative for North Korea, Jung Pak, who are both here to announce associated actions by their departments. Today is the culmination of a long-running investigation. The Justice Department is announcing a deferred prosecution agreement with British American Tobacco, one of the world's largest producers of tobacco products, as well as a guilty plea by its subsidiary, BAT Marketing Singapore. The agreement and the plea resolve charges for bank fraud and for violations of U.S. sanctions against North Korea. Under this agreement, British American Tobacco will pay more than $629 million in penalties. This is the single largest North Korean sanctions penalty in the history of the Department of Justice, and the latest warning to companies everywhere about the costs and the consequences of violating U.S. sanctions. Holding corporate wrongdoers who violate U.S. sanctions accountable is an important priority for the Justice Department. U.S. sanctions are increasingly at the center of U.S. national security, and at the Department of Justice, we are responsible for putting teeth into those sanctions. The United States faces rising threats from authoritarian regimes around the world, including North Korea, Russia, Iran, and China. Sanctions and export controls are among the most powerful weapons in our arsenal, and that's true whether we're punishing North Korea for its rogue nuclear program, degrading Iran's campaign of terror, responding to Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, or countering the multifaceted threats we face from the People's Republic of China. American and multinational companies, especially those that do business in areas of the world that are on the front lines of our sanctions program, bear responsibility for preventing these hostile nation states from profiting from violations of U.S. law. And today's announcement should make it clear corporations must invest in corporate compliance and in a leadership culture that takes responsibility for wrongdoing. And those who fail to do so will be held accountable. The National Security Division is committed to pursuing and punishing companies that evade U.S. sanctions and to imposing real consequences in cases such as this one. And the egregious conduct at issue here today shows why. British American Tobacco and its subsidiary engaged in an elaborate scheme to circumvent U.S. sanctions and sell tobacco products to North Korea through a corporate cutout in Singapore. This conduct, which will be explained more by my colleague Matt Graves, was in clear violation of our bank fraud laws and the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, and this activity ultimately benefits the North Korean regime. In 2007, British American Tobacco announced that it had ended all tobacco sales in North Korea, as required by U.S. sanctions laws. In fact, the company continued to break the law by doing business in the DPRK using a third-party company under the control of its subsidiary. And between 2007 and 2017, this third-party company sold tobacco products to North Korea and received approximately $428 million. This money was then funneled back to British American Tobacco. As a result of these actions, the Singaporean subsidiary has now pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit bank fraud and conspiracy to violate U.S. sanctions. Its parent company, British American Tobacco, is under a deferred prosecution agreement relating to these same charges. At the same time, North Korean purchasers unlawfully made payments using front companies to hide the DPRK's involvement from U.S. banks. And today, we are unsealing charges against 3 of them, North Korean banker Shim Hoon Yun Sop and 2 Chinese nationals, Chin Guoming and Han Lin Lin. The cornerstone of U.S. sanctions on North Korea is that the DPRK's murderous repression at home and relentless pursuit of nuclear capabilities threaten not just its own people, but the entire international community. allowing funds to illegally flow into the coffers of the DPRK is an unconscionable act. As today's announcement shows, the National Security Division and the Department of Justice is working closely with our partner agencies in a whole-of-government approach to sanctions enforcement, and we are committed to leveraging the full range of authorities and investigative resources to counter this threat. I would like to thank U.S. Attorney Graves, the attorneys in his office, as well as the attorneys in the National Security Division for their work in achieving his historic resolution. Under Matt Graves' leadership, the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office has been a trailblazer on sanctions enforcement, and it's a stalwart partner for us in this work. I also want to recognize the strong partnerships that we have with the Departments of Treasury and State and Homeland Security, which have allowed us to work in union to uphold sanctions and export control laws. Finally, I want to acknowledge the dedicated agents of the FBI and HSI who have been at the forefront of investigating this important case. Let me now turn this over to Undersecretary Nelson. Thank you.
Thank you so much, AG Olsen, and thank you all for being here today. I am pleased to join my colleagues from so many different departments for today's announcements and to discuss Treasury's role in this joint effort. Today, Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, better known as OFAC, is announcing a $508 million civil settlement agreement with the London company British American Tobacco for violating sanctions on North Korea imposed for its destabilizing activities and serious human rights abuses. This settlement, which reflects the maximum statutory penalty available, is OFAC's largest settlement ever with a non-financial institution, and it demonstrates our commitment to disrupting North Korea's revenue streams by vigorously enforcing our sanctions. Our settlement today shows that it's not just banks that need to comply with sanctions, it's all businesses, including foreign companies that seek to avail themselves of the U.S. financial system. Hiding behind intermediaries and complex arrangements to evade sanctions will not protect you. Our investigation concluded that BAT, which as AG Olsen noted, is one of the world's largest tobacco companies, engaged in a myriad of apparently violative activity from 2009 to 2017. As AG Olsen described, BAT devised a scheme to obscure its effective ownership and control over a North Korean cigarette manufacturing joint venture and relied on financial facilitators linked to North Korea's WMD proliferation network to enrich itself. Over the course of 7 years, the joint venture's North Korean partners sent over $250 million in profits, including payments due to British American Tobacco, through a complex chain of designated North Korean banks and other intermediaries that ultimately were processed by or received at U.S. financial institutions. According to internal BAT documents, this complex process was meant to reduce the risk of the money being frozen in any one leg of the transaction process. In addition, BAT exported tobacco to the North Korean embassy in Singapore until 2017 and used unwitting U.S. banks to receive or process these payments. BAT knew that any dealings with North Korea could implicate U.S. restrictions. Rather than extricating itself from these dealings, however, even after we sanctioned the North Korean banks involved, the company sought to create and perpetuate the illusion of distance between itself and its North Korean business and avoid scrutiny by banks. Also, as illustrated by our actions yesterday against 3 individuals, including Shim Yoon-suk, for providing support to North Korea through illicit financing and malicious cyber activity, which was also coordinated with DOJ, the United States remains committed to holding accountable those who enable the DPRK's destabilizing activities. So in sum, our message is this: if you try to circumvent our sanctions, there will be serious consequences. And with that, I will turn it over to USA Graves.
Thank you, Undersecretary Nelson. I am Matt Graves, U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. Despite the world aligning to cut North Korea off from international markets because of its unyielding desire to acquire weapons of mass destruction, North Korea persists in its quest. And it has had some success because it cheats the sanctions imposed upon it to deny it access to these markets. One lucrative way North Korea does this is trafficking in counterfeit cigarettes through a web of illegal transactions around the globe. It's estimated that for every dollar North Korea invests in cigarette production materials, it realizes $20 of revenue. A substantial portion of this profit is believed to flow back directly to the North Korean government, its military, and its WMD program. Our actions announced today strike at all parts of the system that prop up these illegal sales. To conduct business in US dollars, North Korea funds front companies, often based in China, which hide their ties to North Korea. With access to US dollars, these front companies buy and sell raw tobacco and engage in transactions with multinational corporations. The suppliers sell tobacco to North Korea and North Korean manufacturers that are often owned by the North Korean military and government. The North Korean manufacturers then produce cigarettes, which are often counterfeits of US brands, and profit by selling the cigarettes both in North Korea and in international markets, obtaining US dollar profits when they do so. As evidenced by today's almost $630 million resolution, the profits from this scheme are staggering, and a substantial portion of them are believed to flow back to the North Korean government and its military. The United States Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia is incredibly appreciative to all of our partners on the stage today who each played an integral role in the investigation and today's joint announcements. And we stand prepared to continue to work with them to do everything we can to shut down these illegal markets and to curb North Korea's nuclear goals. I'd like to welcome Assistant Director Turner to the stage.
Good afternoon. I'm Suzanne Turner, the Assistant Director of the Counterintelligence Division for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And I am pleased to be here today to represent the FBI, which has rigorously investigated this complex case over several years. At the heart of this case is the North Korea regime, which, because of its development of weapons of mass destruction, attempts to steal advanced technology, persistent cybercrime, and its blatant disregard for international sanctions, remains a threat to the international peace and stability. Because of their illegal actions, which have resulted in the sanctions that they continue to violate, North Korea relies on illicit sources of revenue to prop up the regime and the military. The Department of Justice, the FBI, and all of our partners are committed to deterring, disrupting, and denying North Korea access, not only to dual-use technology, but access to the international banking system to minimize the threat that they pose to the international community. In line with this commitment, we are determined to work with all of our partners here in the United States and in other countries. And this is to bring to justice any organization or individual that assists North Korea in circumventing the international sanctions placed upon them. To those companies and individuals thinking of evading international sanctions on North Korea, be forewarned. If you conspire with North Korea, you are helping to grow their illegal weapons of mass destruction and ballistic military programs. I want to thank the FBI Phoenix Field Office for their work, Homeland Security Investigations Colorado's office, the DOJ's Office of International Affairs, State and Treasury, and all of our partners on working on this case. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's really great to be here with all of my colleagues. As you can see, DPRK sanctions implementation is a team sport, and I'm really proud to be with my colleagues from across the U.S. government today. I am Jung Pak. I'm the Deputy Special Rep for the DPRK. I work at the State Department. And I'm pleased to announce that the U.S. Department of State, through the Transnational Organized Crime Rewards Program, is announcing a reward offer of up to $5 million for information leading to the arrest and/or conviction of DPRK National Shim Hyun-sup. We are also offering separate reward offers of up to $500,000 each for information leading to the arrests and/or convictions of People's Republic of China nationals Han Linlin and Chen Guoming. Today's indictment demonstrates that from early 2009 until spring of 2019, Chin, Han, and Shim used multiple front companies to purchase tobacco products and other goods for DPRK customers and laundered US dollars for these shipments. In doing so, the co-conspirators deceived correspondent banks in the United States who would not have otherwise processed these transactions had they known about the nexus to the DPRK. The indictment also indicates the tobacco Chin, Han, and others imported into the DPRK was used to manufacture counterfeit cigarettes, the sales of which benefited the DPRK regime. The TOCRP has been a highly effective tool in our efforts to combat transnational organized crime throughout the world. We frequently receive actionable tips as soon as a reward is posted. Today's actions demonstrate the department's commitment to our whole of government effort to address DPRK's illicit activity. The United States will continue to use all available tools to impede the DPRK's ability to continue funding and developing its unlawful WMD and ballistic missile programs, which threaten regional and international peace and security. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for doing this. Two quick questions. One, is there a connection between these three gentlemen and British American Tobacco? Are there any sort of like entanglement between these two schemes, or these are just charged together? And also, obviously, President Biden is having a meeting with South Korean leader, and I'm wondering if there's any connection between the timing of this announcement and that meeting. Thank you.
So on the first question, these are not the same. They're different charges, and they're similar type of conduct that we're charging in these two cases, but the cases are not the same, and they're not related in that way. Joan, do you want to address the second question?
At the State Department, we're very excited, and the department is abuzz with South Korean President Yoon's state visit. This is President Biden's second state visit of this administration. And as we understand it, we announce cases when they're closed, and so this is part of our ongoing efforts to impede revenue generation by the DPRK that flows into their illegal, unlawful WMD programs.
Well, thanks for doing this. So first, you mentioned that this is just a sign to other corporations to comply with law and put different compliance officers in place. Can you speak more to what this deferred prosecution agreement means specifically for British American Tobacco, what they have to do, what they've already done to come here, and that to this agreement? And then secondly, on an unrelated matter, in the Jack Teixeira case in Massachusetts, can you speak more at all to whether or not there are any other suspects you're looking into, and should we expect more charges in that case?
Sure. On the second question on the Teixeira matter, it's an ongoing case. As you know, the investigation continues. I'm not going to say anything more about the status of that case or whether there's any other suspects. On the first question, I'm going to ask Matt Graves to address some of the specifics, but I would say that this case and others like it do serve as a warning shot to companies, companies that support rogue regimes like North Korea through their activities, that they have to have compliance programs that prevent this type of activity from taking place. And that's a focus of ours in the Justice Department, the National Security Division. We are increasing our resources and attorneys focused on corporate compliance that affects national security because it's an increasing area of concern. With respect specifically to British Tobacco, I'm going to ask Matt to address that.
Sure, thank you for the question. So whenever we're structuring these corporate resolutions, we have two primary objectives in mind: punishing for the conduct that occurred and taking steps to ensure that similar conduct does not occur again. And that latter objective, how that's achieved, can look different depending on the resolution. Here, BAT was in substantial conversations with the government for a sustained period of time. It was able to fix some of the compliance deficiencies that existed that led to these transactions illegally occurring during time, and demonstrate at the time of entering into the resolution that it had already taken a number of positive steps to what we call remediate the problems. It will continue to report to the government on a periodic basis to ensure that all continues to go well on the fixing going forward front, and obviously paying nearly $630 million in penalties is a substantial penalty for the conduct in which the company engaged.
Hi, Mr. Olsen. I've got two questions for you. One, in terms of this conduct at BAT, given the amount of money involved, $630 million in the penalty, are we to believe that there were not individuals at the company that were aware of this volume of illegal transactions taking place? And if there were, why are they not part of this announcement today? And on a second question, following up about the Texera case, can you explain how the National Security Division decides which mishandling of classified information cases are briefed to, say, the White House as opposed to kept internally within the Justice Department?
Yeah, I'll take the second one first, because and just to say that it's an ongoing case, and I'm not going to talk about either the case or sort of your questions, kind of the issues around how we brief and things like that. This is an ongoing investigation, so I'm just going to leave it at that. On the first question, it's an important question and a serious one. I think, look, the terms of the company's criminal liability are laid out in the public filings. Those documents do not provide a resolution as to any individuals, and I really can't comment beyond that on beyond what's in the filings. I would point out that we are charging these 3 individuals that we talked about today who helped facilitate similar illegal transactions, and we're going to pursue those cases as appropriate.
Question from Mr. Olsen. Again, I will split it into one you will answer and one you won't. The first one is, with the indictments yesterday, I believe all 4 of the gentlemen named were operating or are operating out of China. So to what extent are we dealing with a China issue as opposed to a North Korea issue, number one? And also on the Texera case, is this case likely to be adjudicated in Boston, or is there a possibility of it being moved to an alternative venue?
Well, so actually on the Texera case, I can say the case is venued in Boston, and that's where it is being prosecuted as of now. I don't have anything more to say about that, but it is currently being prosecuted and venued in the District of Massachusetts in Boston. I'm not going to comment further on that. Your first question, look, we're very concerned generally about the threat posed by the PRC. And it's, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, it's multifaceted. It includes transnational repression, it includes theft of trade secrets, it includes cyber-related activities. So we're concerned about that threat in its many and varied forms. Here we are, the public filings speak for themselves in terms of the relationship of China and North Korea. I'm going to let those allegations or those statements in the public filings today and in the allegations in the indictment speak for themselves. I would ask, Jung, if you want to address the general question relating to China and its relationship to North Korea.
Great question. At all levels of the U.S. government, when we engage with PRC interlocutors, DPRK is one of those topics, given the instability, the regional instability and the WMD proliferation implications of DPRK's ongoing weapons activity. And so the PRC and Russia have a responsibility to do more on sanctions implementation, since they have also agreed to with the international community and signed on to the almost a dozen UN Security Council resolutions that was designed to try to stop, constrain, and prevent the DPRK from continuing on with its weapons program.
Mr. Olsen, I'm not going to ask a question about this case. I want to ask you about the review of classified documents related to former Vice President Pence. Could you give us an update on that one, which I think is the only one that has not been sent over to a special counsel? Can you provide any update as to, the review that has been ongoing on that one?
I'm afraid I'm not going to give you an answer on that. I have nothing to add on the status of that.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.